Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and I hope you've had a good break. We are now past COP28. I'm sure all of you now know that after the 2 weeks, the whole gathering of world leaders, etc., has come up with exactly zero, nothing. So that has made no impact on our environment other than maybe the huge carbon footprint of all the flights and hotels and people talking and electricity and all that kind of thing. So back to our real environments now, and by this I mean our human environments. Today I'd like to talk about um, the Western push to fracture African societies or societies in the global South, and it comes through what is euphemistically called gender issues. And I say euphemistically because let's face it, what happens in Kenya under the umbrella of gender issues is actually about women. So if they were honest, they just call it women's issues, which are important. But the first problem happens when it starts being hidden under a different name. In the environment field, you would have noticed from a lot of the talk around climate change that there's a lot of noise around climate change somehow affecting women and children differently from how it affects men in Africa. There's no talk about different impacts of climate change on men, on between men and women in the United States or in Europe or in the global north or even in Asia. It's only in Africa. And this is why I've said several times that climate change is the new tool of colonialism. And first thing to do to take resources, you have to fragment the society that lives with, amongst, or on those resources. And this is one key method. So we've been told a lot of things, that climate change increases drought, and drought somehow has heavier impact on women because women do what are generally referred to as domestic chores, etc. And this is all targeted. This propaganda is all targeted mainly at pastoralist communities and those who live in the rangelands. Firstly, okay, when there's a drought, water sources obviously become few and far between. Women who do the job of fetching would have to walk further. That's a fact. However, the men who maybe graze the animals have to go maybe 5 times further than they usually go to find grazing, to find places to water their livestock. They get into fights with maybe other clans or other ethnic groups in competition for water resources and grass resources. We've even seen them coming into violent conflict with ranchers here in Laikipia as they seek to make their way to pastures. So the issue of climate change, the effect is uniform across genders, age groups, etc. That's a fact. Anything else it may be different. The mechanism of impact may be different, but the weight of impact is the same. Anybody who tells you anything different from that, that's just rubbish propaganda. Secondly, attendance and participation in these global forums, which I'm very skeptical about. There's always people invited because they're youth. There are always people invited because they're women. So you are there to appear in photos as a young person or as a woman. You are even encouraged to wear traditional garb. I mean, I've got many friends in Kenya from pastoralist communities who I have never in my life seen them wearing traditional garb other than when I meet them at meetings outside the country. We need to ask ourselves, why don't they wear that stuff in Nanyuki or Isiolo or Nairobi? We have to ask ourselves, why you're being used as props. And it's to fragment societies, and it's so that when Kenyans appear at an international meeting, it should be obvious who is Masai and who is Luo and who is Kikuyu and who is whatever other ethnic group, even to someone who is from China. You should see that there's a difference. These are not people representing Kenya. These ones matter in a different way from those other ones. And this is the basic tool of subversion. Divide and rule. Well tried and tested and used even in colonial 19th century imperial colonialism. So if you think about it, and I'm talking to the youth now, when someone invites you somewhere to share your ideas, that's great. It means you have good ideas. If he invites you to share your ideas because you are young, that's rubbish. Being young is a transitional state. It's not, youth is not a virtue or achievement. Everybody is born a baby. And you are just young now because you were born X years ago. So your youth should not be used as a reason to include you somewhere. You should be included because of your intellectual contribution to whatever discourse is going on. And I know this is difficult to understand because they make it very exciting. I've even met some young lady who was invited to Davos, that rubbish World Economic Forum. And she's very young. She's probably in her 20s. And I was intrigued. She told me, yes, I met Bill Gates, I met Buffett, I don't know who, Bezos and all these other capitalists. And I asked her, like, so what were you doing there? What did you discuss? What did you talk about? And she couldn't tell me anything. She just scrolled through her phone showing me pictures she took with all these rich people. And that is what I mean. A few years ago, there was a young Ugandan lady called, I think, Vanessa Nakate. She was cropped out of a photo with Greta Thunberg and a few other young climate activists from Europe. And there was a huge ruckus about it. But what people didn't realize is that even Greta and the others were all being exploited. I mean, and to her credit, Greta hardly appears in these places anymore now. She's grown up and realized that she was being exploited by older people to pass a message that wasn't hers. And this is the reality we have to live with. Our cohesion is our biggest and best defense against those who want to take our resources. And even in my personal experience, I've given talks in many places, and it is only 2 times have I been accused, wrongly I may add, of being racist and prejudiced. And both times it was by Kenyan pastoralist women at the behest of certain conservation organizations. And I noticed that this makes it difficult because of our culture to talk back or address the verbal assault as it has come. But it's a reality we have to live with. And if you look at the projects these people do, there's no projects or initiatives being done in these areas that cover the entire society. It's always we are creating a project to do something for women, to keep women busy. I've even heard that as though these women are idle. There's something for the women, a meeting, this, that, the other for the women that must necessarily exclude men. And this is their most powerful tool. And this includes things like beadwork. I've never had in a pastoralist area a livestock project for women. It's always beadwork. And beadwork is something that these are people who are very skilled in, and they've done it for many, many generations. The only difference now is that there's an outsider involved in it. We should ask ourselves, why should any outsider, foreigner, want to be involved in beadwork? Other than the fact that they want to expand it, they want to expand it to a level that it occupies more and more and more women and more of their time, removing them from the home base where they are the ones who keep things together. In societies where the men go out to graze the animals, take the animals to market, to pasture, to water, etc., this can be hundreds of miles depending on the dry season or climatic conditions. It's the women who hold things together at home. When they come back to what they know, their home village, it's the women who have things in order. They've kept things together for the months, of the dry months, while the men are away. They've taken care of the young children. They've taken care of the young livestock that couldn't go the hundreds of miles, and they've kept things together. If these women are subtracted from this equation, that society's foundation is completely compromised. And this is what is happening in many places, not just in Kenya, but in Tanzania, East and Southern Africa. It's about fracturing the society. That it's not about creating profit. As I've said before, I've never seen or heard of someone who's ever become wealthy through beadwork. And I stand to be corrected if anybody knows any independent beadwork business that has created wealth. And I'm not talking about donor subsidies, I'm talking about wealth from sale enterprise. And this is the reason why also that pastoralism is considered such an enemy, or enemy in quotes, of conservation. It's because pastoralism creates wealth, and wealthy people cannot be manipulated. And it's one of the great ironies of life that those who are the people from pastoralist communities who are employed by conservation organizations in highly paid jobs actually use those earnings to buy more livestock and keep them elsewhere. But we must understand the suppression of pastoralism through government channels, through NGOs, through conservation organizations, through propaganda, including about their contribution to climate change, is about weakening communities. When someone tells you emissions from livestock are causing climate change, you've detected a racist or a fascist or a neocolonialist. Simple as that. I once asked one of these people, if emissions from animals are causing so much problems, why don't we solve our environmental problems first? Instead of taking away people's livestock, let's kill off all the elephants and buffaloes. And at least we'll have contained the emissions, and they don't belong to anybody, so no one will be poorer. And they say, no. So what's the difference between methane from elephants and from cattle? The difference is that cattle are owned by pastoralists, and they enrich pastoralists, and they give pastoralists power. That is the difference. If you can't read any academic paper, just read one: Settler Colonialism and Elimination of the Native, by the late Patrick Wolf, an Australian sociologist. He breaks down all of this, and it's in the Journal of Genocide Studies. It's not in a conservation journal. That itself can teach us a lesson. Read it, look around you, and think about why you've been included. Think about what they want from you. A good friend of mine was a reputable lady, was recently invited to be on the board of a conservancy, and she's never been involved in any conservation work. And she was wondering why, and I told her it's because the best way to hide the old white man's narrative is to put a relatively young, black, reputable woman in front of the camera, and it all passes. So it's all malice. They never sleep, so we must keep ourselves alert. Think about that.